The citadel hung above the war-scarred moon like a black crown studded with cold, glittering stars. Towering spires jutted from its brutalist architecture, each adorned with alien carvings that pulsed with a sickly emerald light. It was a palace, built by conquest and cruelty, and no place on the moon below was untouched by its shadow. Jackson Reed stepped off his ship into the Baron's private landing bay, boots thudding against the polished obsidian floor. Dust from the Ravager tunnels still clung to his scorched armor. His face was lined with stubble and smeared with ash, and a jagged cut along his jaw still wept a little blood beneath the dried smear. He didn't bother to clean up. This job had been hell, and he wanted his payment fast. A pair of Vex's honor guards flanked the corridor, their plasma spears humming softly as they watched him pass. Jackson didn't flinch. He'd seen worse than posturing soldiers. He'd walked through fields of screaming men on fire, fought beasts that bled acid, and survived missions every sane merc had turned down. He was led into the throne room, a cavernous chamber of crystal and steel. Light refracted in unnatural ways off the ceiling, casting fractured shadows over the alien noble lounging on his crystalline throne. Baron Vex reclined with a goblet of violet liquid, his emerald green, skin glistening with faint scales that shimmered with each movement. His silver eyes gleamed with thinly veiled amusement. Jackson Reed, Vex purred, raising his goblet, the indomitable human. I must say, I'm impressed. Not many survive an encounter with Ravagers, much less exterminate a whole nest. Jackson stopped at the base of the dais, arms crossed. We had a deal. I take care of your problem. You pay me 50,000 in solar credits. No complications, Vex chuckled. The sound was like shattered glass being stirred in a bowl. Ah, but my dear mercenary, in these trying times, currency is such a fleeting thing. Allow me to offer you something far more valuable. Jackson's eyes narrowed. Don't play games with me, Vex. Never, the Baron said, snapping his fingers. A side door slid open with a hiss. 2 guards stepped in, pushing a low cart. On it lay a woman, reclining on rich cushions like some exotic offering. She was beautiful in a way that made Jackson's breath catch pale green skin with the softness of silk, long midnight black hair cascading over her shoulders, and a form-fitting gown of beige and gold that hugged her curves. But her lower half was unmoving, draped carefully, hiding nothing of the truth. The Baron's grin widened. My daughter, Phila, paralyzed, alas, after a rather unfortunate hover skiff accident. Quite the shame. She was once so active. The woman's eyes snapped open, cold and burning all at once. She looked directly at Jackson, unblinking. I figured. Vex continued, swirling his drink. Why not give her to someone who might appreciate her? Potential? A parting gift, if you will. Jackson's jaw tensed. You're giving me your daughter? As what? Payment? Precisely, the Baron said. She is yours now. Or would you rather leave empty-handed? The guards began wheeling the cart toward him. Jackson's hand drifted to the blaster at his hip, then stopped. Vex's guards lined the room. He'd never make it out alive. This is sick, he growled. Think of it as a long-term investment, the Baron said, waving him off as they pushed the cart toward the exit. The woman Phila turned her head to Jackson, voice cool and sharp. You think I'm helpless? She said, her gaze piercing. Then you've already underestimated me. The air in the room seemed to shift. Jackson met her eyes. For the first time that day, he felt uncertain, and that, more than anything else, scared him. His stellar vagrant broke atmosphere with a shuddering roar, its ion thrusters carving twin scars into the void as it fled the barren citadel. The ship groaned with strain. Metal plates still scorched from the Ravager tunnels and patchwork repairs holding by sheer will and ducted plasma seals. Jackson Reed sat in the pilot's seat, one eye on the nav chart, the other on the sensor array, which blinked faint warnings about reactor instability again. He hadn't said a word since they left orbit. Behind him, in the makeshift cargo hold, lay the so-called payment the Baron had dumped on him like discarded equipment. Her hover stretcher was strapped down between crates of spare parts and stolen alien tech, the cushions beneath her too fine for this rust bucket of a ship. But her posture was rigid, her back straight, and her expression unreadable. Jackson finally stood, letting the autopilot handle the drift to neutral space. He walked to the cargo hold, each step echoing through the ship's steel bones. When he entered, her eyes tracked him instantly, cool, calculating, and sharper than most mercenary commanders he'd met. "You haven't tried to sell me yet," Fla said. Her voice was velvet and venom, smooth and dangerous. "I admit, I'm a little surprised." Jackson leaned against the frame of the doorway. "Didn't realize paralyzed princesses fetched much on the black market." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, they do. Especially ones with access codes to half their father's weapons caches." "But you already knew that." "I figured." He studied her. "You're not what I expected." Fla's lips curved into something that might have been a smile or a snarl. "Did you expect me to cry? Plead? Moan about lost dignity?" "I expected dead weight," Jackson admitted. "Instead, I got an aristocrat with a spine made of star iron." "Iron's overrated," she said. "What I have is information. And if you're as smart as the stories say, you'll realize I'm worth more alive, conscious and cooperative than anything the Baron ever paid you with." Jackson folded his arms. "Talk." "Not yet." She tilted her head. "I don't give away secrets for free, even when I'm being treated like cargo." He resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "I'm not treating you like cargo. You strapped me between power cells and salvage from a crashed dreadnought. It's the safest place on the ship. It's also where you keep the things you're planning to trade." "Touch, ye acute." Jackson exhaled and pushed off the wall, walking over to her. "What do you want?" Her answer came immediately. "Access to a restricted medical facility. One that holds an experimental neural interface, the only one advanced enough to bridge the damage in my spinal column." "That tech's under military lock and key," Jackson said. "Even if I knew how to get in." "You do," she cut in. "I've read your file. You stole a quantum lance from the Arcforge vault, piloted a stolen marauder through a collapsing wormhole, survived the Scourge planets. If anyone can break into Nexus 9's medical wing, it's you." He stared at her. "You've done your homework." "I do everything my father said I couldn't." Her voice lowered, "including walk again." For a moment, Jackson saw it. Not just the rage, not just the intellect, but the hope. It burned like a second sun behind her eyes. And it scared him more than the Ravagers ever had, because hope meant risk. Hope meant attachment. "I help you," he said slowly. "And you?" "Give me what?" "Everything I know about my father's weapon deals, shipping manifests, bank routes, and black site labs. Enough dirt to burn him to cinders and sell the ash." That caught his attention. Before he could respond, the ship jolted violently. Warning klaxons blared through the deck. Jackson sprinted to the cockpit. "Proximity alert, someone's tracking us." A streak of plasma fire scorched past the viewport. Lock-on confirmed. 2 vessels, sleek, fast, no transponder IDs. Fla's voice came through the intercom, calm and sharp. "They're not pirates, they're Krell's hounds. My father must have sold my location before we even left orbit. You said Krell wanted your father's empire. He also wanted me gift-wrapped." And silenced. Jackson's hands flew over the controls. The stellar vagrant twisted between bursts of plasma fire, spiraling through an asteroid belt with hull-scraping precision. "She's not built for a fight," he muttered. Then don't fight, Phyllis snapped. Outfly them. I'm working. On it. Suddenly, a new signal lit up on the screen. A third vessel, larger. Familiar. Oh, hell. That's the Baron's personal cruiser. They're closing in fast, Phyllis said. He wants to make sure the joke doesn't turn into a scandal. Jackson punched in a blind jump. We don't make Nexus 9, we're dead. Then make it, Phyllis said, her voice steel. Or, I swear, I'll haunt your broken-down ship for the rest of time. The jump drive charged as plasma fire raked the ship's rear thrusters. Jackson gritted his teeth, fingers bleeding from fractured controls. Brace! He shouted. The stars folded inward, light warping into tunnels of silver blue. Streaks dot in the cargo hold. Fla lay against the safety restraints, breathing heavily, her fingers clenched into fists. She stared up at the ceiling, her face lined with exhaustion, fury, and something else. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, don't let this be the end. In the cockpit, the stars returned. Nexus 9's orbit came into view, glittering. Like a crown of thorns. Jackson exhaled hard. We're not done, he muttered. A long pause crackled through the intercom before Fla's voice replied. No, she said. We're just getting started. The orbital approach to Nexus 9 felt like entering the ribs of some ancient, long-dead leviathan. Spires of metal twisted from the central structure like the skeletal fingers of a titan lost to time. Bright white lights pulsed in slow, rhythmic patterns across the hull, like a heartbeat, cold and mechanical. Jackson hated it already. From the cockpit of the stellar vagrant, he eyed the docking protocols streaming in. Too precise. Too clean. Nothing about this place smelled of trust. The station was technically a research facility, but everyone in the underworld knew what that meant. Military contracts, weapons prototypes, and secrets buried under 10 layers of deniable bureaucracy. Docking. Bay 12, Jackson muttered. Of course, deepest one. Minimal exits. Expected, Fla said from behind him, her voice calm and calculating. They want you boxed in. Makes the betrayal cleaner. I haven't even stepped off the ship yet. Doesn't matter. Krell already made his offer. 5 million credits. Jackson didn't need to look at her to know she'd read the message the second it came in. Her voice had changed. Not surprised. Not offended. Resigned. He glanced back. Fla sat in the co-pilot seat now, posture perfect. Hair pulled back, a fitted tactical wrap draped over her upper body to hide the medical apparatus still integrated into her spine. Her legs remained unmoving, but her eyes flickered with a mix of rage and genius. You always assume people will betray you? He asked. Only the ones who've had reason to, she said. Besides, you haven't said no. He didn't answer. Instead, he activated landing protocols, guiding the stellar vagrant toward a docking cradle lined with weapon mounts. Big ones. Hostile greeting party, he muttered. Krell doesn't do subtle, Fla replied. They landed with a hiss of vented pressure. As the ramp lowered, Jackson glanced back at her. You stay on the ship? Not a chance. You're still integrating with the enhancement. If it destabilizes in here, I'll manage. She held up a control bracer wired directly into the neural rig on her back. Besides, I don't trust you to do this alone. He knew. Better than to argue. 2 guards greeted them in the docking bay. Military-grade armor. Plasma rifles. No smiles. Commander Reed, one said flatly. Lord Krell will see you in the upper rotunda. Bring the ... Asset. She has a name, Jackson said. Doesn't matter to Krell, Fla muttered. Rolling forward in the hover chair, she'd insisted on assembling herself. They were escorted through corridors laced with blinking motion sensors and ambient drones that hovered just a few inches from every ceiling. The place smelled like cold steel and sterilized secrets. Scientists passed them in tight-lipped silence, avoiding eye contact. Cameras tracked every breath. Finally, they entered a wide glass chamber overlooking the core reactor, a glowing orb suspended in magnetic flux. Lord Darius Krell stood at its center, hands clasped behind his back, looking every bit the Predator. In a silk coat, his skin was pale blue and patterned with metallic lines that pulsed faintly with biocircuitry. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Jackson Reed," he said smoothly, "the Baron's favorite little mercenary. And look, you brought the gift yourself." Fla's expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened. Jackson stepped forward. "Let's skip the posturing. You made me an offer." Krell nodded. 5 million, transferable instantly. "All I ask is you hand over the Baron's daughter, alive, unharmed, enhanced or not." "And what do you want with her?" Jackson asked. Krell's smile thinned. "Does it matter?" "It does to me," Phila said coldly. Krell finally turned his gaze to her. "My dear, you were born to power. You were wasted under your father's roof. I can offer you a place where your intelligence, your uniqueness, your enhancements are not just tolerated, they're celebrated." "Celebrated how?" She snapped. "In a lab? On an operating table?" "Details," Krell said. "Besides, it's not as though you've got many options." Jackson looked from Krell to Fla. "Well, that's his pitch." Fla's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're considering it?" Jackson didn't blink. "No." A long pause. Krell frowned. "No?" He repeated. Jackson shrugged. "I've got a new deal. Better partner. Way more dangerous." With lightning speed, he drew his pistol and fired not at Krell, but at the drone hovering above the far doorway. The round shattered the sensor, triggering automated alarms. At that exact moment, Fla activated her bracer. The hover chair dropped into manual mode. A blast of kinetic energy fired from beneath, launching her backward straight into a nearby service shaft already pried open with a thin line of detonation gel. Krell shouted, "Seize them!" But Fla was gone, racing through maintenance tunnels, deeper into Nexus-9. Jackson spun, ducked, and fired. Guards fell. Alarms blared louder. Krell lunged for a communicator. "Lock down Section K7. She's going for the medical labs." "No," Jackson said, tossing a pulse grenade into the control console. The lights went dark. Deep in the belly of the station, Fla crawled through a utility tunnel, sweat pouring down her neck. Her hands, strengthened from weeks of dragging, her motionless legs, pulled her weight like she was born for this. She reached the sealed lab door, Section K7, and entered the override code she'd memorized from stolen blueprints. The door hissed open. Inside, a cold room filled with humming machines awaited. At the center, a single pod suspended by grav-magnetic arms. In it, the neural interface, glowing like bottled lightning. She reached for it. Her back spasmed. "Pain. Not now," she hissed, sliding the interface around her spine. The rig hissed, clicked, and then power. Raw, undiluted. Like stars detonating inside her veins. Fla screamed. In the control room above, screens lit up with red alerts. Unauthorized neural integration detected. Subject's vitals unstable. Mutation in progress. Jackson, still fighting Krell's forces, heard her scream through the comms. Then, silence. "Fla," he whispered. A new voice filled the comms. Not quite hers. Not quite not. "I can see everything." "Absolutely." Here is Chapter 4, continuing with a deeper descent into suspense, power, and transformation, blending body horror level tension with romance, military intrigue, and rising stakes. The chapter explores the aftermath of Fla's neural enhancement activation and the consequences of becoming something more than anyone anticipated. For 13 seconds, The ship-wide comms echoed with silence. Then came the voice, glitched at first, layered, almost mechanical, yet unmistakably. "Thla, I can see everything." Jackson froze mid-motion, a guard's energy blade swinging just inches from his face. He dodged, spun, and fired a clean shot through the attacker's chest, his mind barely present. His heart thundered not from the fight, but from the voice still echoing in his cum implant. "Thla?" he said, breath-catching. There was no reply, just the soft hum of static, like 1,000 whispered thoughts crawling over the signal. Below Nexus 9's main deck, deep in the restricted core of the medical research wing, Thla hung suspended. In a web of light, the neural interface had grafted into her spinal cord like living circuitry. Metallic filaments wound across her skin, weaving into her nerves. Her body convulsed once, then again before it stilled. Her eyes opened. Gone was the faint jade of her irises. In their place glowed a molten gold threaded with fractal geometry. Her senses exploded outward, not just vision, sound, or touch, but something else entirely. She could feel the ship's systems, hear the electrical pulses of security nodes, taste the rhythms of engine vibrations as if they were symphonies. Her fingers twitched and her legs moved, first a tremble, then a jolt, then a purposeful shift. She looked down, breath hitching as both legs, long dormant, obeyed her command. She fell forward, gasping, catching herself with shaking arms on the cold steel floor. No, not fell. She had stood. The scream that tore from her chest wasn't of pain, it was triumph, but it came at a price. Every nerve in her body burned like fire and starlight. Her pulse pounded with impossible intensity, and her thoughts had become something else. They ran in parallel. Some followed logical paths. Others leapt sideways, fractal, recursive. She wasn't just thinking faster. She was becoming. Faster. She was evolving. Jackson, bleeding from a gash across his ribs, tore down the corridor toward K7, his every step echoing the phrase, "I can see everything." He rounded a corner and collided with two guards, already downed, eyes glazed over, weapons powered off. No wounds, just empty. What the hell? He muttered. Then the door to K7 slid open. Smoke drifted out like breath from a slumbering giant, and there she stood. THLA. No hover chair, no limp, no assistance. She stood in the center of the room, like a queen made of fire and shadow, her gown torn at the sides, enhancement filaments still glowing along her back and collarbones like alien tattoos. Her hair floated slightly as if gravity itself bent to her pulse. Her golden eyes locked onto his with intensity that made his stomach twist, not with fear, but something far more primal. THLA. "I did it," she whispered, her voice reverberating with a harmonic undertone. "I can walk. I can feel everything." He stepped forward instinctively, blood trickling down his side. "Are you? Still you?" She tilted her head. "I'm more me than I've ever been." Then she staggered. Jackson caught her as her knees buckled, not out of weakness, but overload. Her body trembled in his arms, the glow fading slightly. "The interface, it's trying to stabilize. It's adapting to me, but it's pulling too much neural feedback. I need an anchor. Something constant, something physical." "You mean?" "Me?" he asked, already wrapping an arm around her. She nodded, breathless. "Your touch dampens the feedback, calms the loops. It's like the enhancement recognizes you." "Great," Jackson muttered. "I'm a walking neural firewall." She grinned, despite everything. "You've always been more useful than you look." Then her smile faded. "They're coming." Above them, in the control ring of Nexus 9, Krell roared with frustration. Dozens of security feeds flickered with static or displayed corrupted data. His systems were being overridden from inside layer by layer. Seal every lab. Kill the power grid. Flush the oxygen if you have to. He barked. One of his aides hesitated. Sir, if we do that, the reactor. I do not care. Krell snarled out in that moment. All he saw was power slipping from his grasp. The daughter of Vex, the broken girl meant to be his pawn, had become something else entirely. Something dangerous. If she made it off Nexus 9, she could expose every backroom deal, every black site, every illegal biotech trade. He activated the emergency beacon. A direct signal to Baron Nex. She's not yours anymore, he whispered, but she won't be mine either. Back in the lab, Fla was already calculating escape vectors through her enhanced senses. There's a cargo tunnel beneath the reactor, she said. It leads to the emergency shuttles. Heavily guarded, but the corridor is narrow. His men won't be able to swarm it. You can really walk? Jackson asked, still half in disbelief. She leaned into him. Walk, run, burn through every firewall Krell ever built. And maybe fly, if this keeps escalating. Side effects? Possible neurological collapse. Or godhood, I'll let you know. They shared a look. Brief. Loaded dot, then they moved dot as they fled. Fla's presence bent. The station systems in real time. Doors unlocked. Cameras shorted. Automated defenses spun to protect them. And with every step, her movement became more fluid, more inhumanly graceful. Jackson watched her in awe. The woman who'd once been wheeled into his cargo hold as a twisted joke was now hacking the walls with her mind and leading their escape like a tactician possessed, but she was weakening. Sweat beaded on her brow. The neural interface burned hot. She needed him. Constantly. Every moment he wasn't touching her. Her readings spiked. Panic, pain, chaos. I'm still adapting, she gasped. The tech needs time. The child. Might be stabilizing it, but not fast enough. Jackson stopped dead. Child? She froze, eyes wide. I was going to tell you. Another explosion rocked the station. We'll talk later, he said. Promise? On my life. As they reached the final tunnel, an entire platoon of Krell's enforcers waited. Plasma rifles, exosuits, drones. Jackson swore. Too many. No, Fla said. She stepped forward. The filaments along her spine flared. The walls trembled. The weapons powered down. And in a voice not entirely hers, she whispered, I am not your experiment. I am not your heir. I am not your bargaining chip. The guards dropped their weapons. They bowed. Krell watched from his control deck in horror as his army kneeled to the woman he discarded as worthless. Impossible, he whispered. No, Jackson said as he keyed the shuttle launch. Potential. The ship launched into space, leaving behind fire, failure, and the last remnants of Krell's empire crumbling into ash. Inside. Fla slumped against Jackson, glowing faintly, heartbeat syncing with his. I think we just started. A revolution, she whispered. You think? I know, she said, eyes fluttering shut. And for once, Jackson believed in something other than survival. He believed in her. Of the saga, intensifying the emotional and political stakes, introducing new layers of power, and pushing the romance and sci-fi intrigue toward a boiling point. It blends tension, transformation, and prophecy as Fla and Jackson begin to realize they're not just fighting for survival, they're becoming the spark of something. Galaxy-shaking. The rogue facility didn't exist on any star chart. It was tucked into the heart of a derelict asteroid belt in the outer rim, surrounded by gravitational distortions and cloaked by magnetic anomalies. Only those who had been desperate, exiled, or hunted ever came here, and even fewer left. Jackson Reed guided the stellar vagrant into a docking chute barely wider than the ship itself. Sensors crackled with interference. Heat maps bled into static. The hull groaned with pressure, as if the asteroid itself wanted to swallow them whole. In the passenger bay, Fla sat hunched in the padded jump seat, her golden eyes duller than usual, skin slick with sweat. The neural interface along her back flickered unevenly, like a dying star trying to reignite. Her hand clutched her abdomen. Jackson kept glancing at her in the overhead mirror. Almost there. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice thin. "You nearly passed out after overriding the orbital defense net." "Because I was busy hacking a 1,000-year-old military AI through emotional instability and morning sickness," she muttered. He smirked. "You're not helping your case." They docked in silence. The airlock cycled open with a gasp, revealing a dimly lit corridor of mismatched alloys and dim red lights. Weapons clicked in the shadows. Then came the voice, familiar, irritated, and laced with suspicion. "Reed, if you've brought me another fugitive girlfriend, I swear I'll eject you into vacuum myself." "Nice to see you too, Doctor," Jackson called out. Dr. Elena Varel Reed, former military geneticist, outlawed for unauthorized neural interface experiments, stepped into the light. Her dark hair was braided tight, her coat stained with chemical burns, and her expression equal parts annoyed and intrigued. Then she saw THLA. And froze. "Oh," she breathed. "That's not just a fugitive girlfriend." "No," Jackson said. "She's something else." Fla met the doctor's gaze with regal steel. "I need your help." Dr. Reed stepped closer, scanning the glowing filaments on Fla's back, her swollen abdomen, the energy pulsing around her skin. "Is that the interface from Nexus 9? She whispered. "It's evolved," Fla replied. "Integrated with my neural matrix, and something more." Elena turned to Jackson. "What did you do?" "I took a job," he muttered. In the operating chamber, Fla lay in a zero-gravity cocoon as Dr. Reed worked, her fingers dancing across diagnostic panels and neural monitors. "It's not just adapting to her biology," she said. "It's growing with it. The fetus your child is acting as a living harmonic stabilizer. It's syncing the interface with your DNA, Jackson. The bond between you two, it's hardwired." Jackson stood at the observation window, fists clenched. "What happens if we separate?" "The readings collapse. Neural chaos. Possible system rejection. Seizure. Death. But worse, if this pregnancy progresses without support, the enhancement might force a full mutation." "Mutation?" Jackson's voice dropped. "Her nervous system is already evolving. Reflexes, awareness, interface control. If the progression continues unchecked, she could become something post-sentient. Not fully alien, not fully human. Something new. And the baby?" Dr. Reed hesitated. "The baby will be the first of its kind." Hours later, floated in the cocoon, skin glowing faintly in the ambient light. Jackson sat beside her, one hand resting over hers. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The baby. She's aware. Not conscious like us, but sensing, syncing. And she's stabilizing me faster than the interface alone ever could." He didn't speak. He couldn't, not with the warship-sized weight resting on his chest. "I wasn't supposed to have a future," she said. "My father saw me as a burden, broken, unworthy of legacy. And now I'm carrying the future." "You're not just carrying it," Jackson said. "You're creating it." She looked at him, golden eyes burning softly. "Does it scare you?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "But it also makes everything else feel smaller." A moment passed. Quiet. Honest. Then alarms blared. Dr. Reed's voice crackled over the comms. "Jackson. Multiple ships. Warp signatures just across the perimeter net. He stood. Krell? No. Worse. The screen lit up. Baron Nex's flagship, flanked by 2 cruisers and an old Purity Directive signal. Thla's pulse surged. He found us. No way he traced the ship. He didn't. He traced me, Thla said. The interface has broadcast-level energy emissions. If he's been watching high-energy anomalies, Jackson drew his pistol. Then we don't let him get what he came for. Wait, Thla sat up in the cocoon, body trembling. I need to confront him. Absolutely not. I need to. She slid free, her bare feet touching the cold metal for the first time without pain. He gave me away as a joke. If this ends without him seeing what I've become, I'll never be free of him. Outside, Vex's warships docked. Troops stormed the corridors. Dr. Reed armed the facility's automated defenses. If he gets to the lab, he'll try to take her. Or worse, dissect her. You know what the Purity Directive believes. Jackson gritted his teeth. That hybrids are contamination. But now, Thla said, stepping into the corridor, energy flickering in her wake. We have proof their evolution. The confrontation took place in the old gravity well chamber, an ancient sphere once used for mass compression experiments. Now it served as the crucible for legacy and revolution. Baron Nex entered with his guards, his eyes locking onto his daughter and widening. She stood tall, glowing, alive. Thla? He said, voice faltering. You gave me away like a broken toy, she said coldly. Now look what your cast-off has become. He took a step forward. You don't understand. That interface, you're unstable. You're infected. No, she whispered. I'm free. And in a single pulse of thought, the chamber sealed. Weapons locked. Gravity increased tenfold, enough to drop his soldiers to their knees. I was born a prisoner, she said, her voice amplified through the facility. Crippled by your expectations. Shackled by your shame. You're becoming a monster. He hissed, I'm becoming hope. Behind her, Jackson stepped into the light, pistol raised. We're leaving. Try and stop us, see how evolved she really is. Vex hesitated, and then, like all tyrants, he chose pride. He fired. Thla caught the bolt mid-her. Not with her hand. With her will. It hovered an inch from her chest, shaking, pulsing before it dissipated into harmless photons. Silence. And then she spoke the words that would echo across history. I was your joke, father, but now? I'm the punchline that rewrote the code. Jackson and Thla walked past the kneeling guards, hand in hand, leaving behind a father broken not by violence, but by the undeniable truth of her transformation. The revolution had already begun. He'd broadcast that shook the stars. The galaxy listened in silence. Across every terminal, every black market array, every resistance channel buried beneath a planet's crust or orbiting above a poison atmosphere, the signal went out. Thla's voice echoed like thunder. This is not a declaration of war. This is a declaration of truth. Jackson watched from the cockpit of the stellar vagrant, his fingers frozen above the navigation controls. The ship drifted in high orbit above. The rogue facility cloaked in a radiation field that blocked all conventional scans. Below, Baron Nex's flagship still floated powerless, shut down by Thla's last pulse of neural will. But up here, where space was quiet and the stars felt like distant gods holding their breath, the signal was louder than any weapon. Thla stood before the comms array, wrapped in a sleek interface gown that shimmered with living circuits. The enhancement had fully integrated, now her spine and skin woven with a lattice of alien and human tech. Her belly, rounded with life, glowed faintly with soft golden light. Behind her, thousands of data feeds streamed in real time. Baron Nex's weapon deals, Lord Krell's genetic violations, Purity Directive communications intercepted mid-transmission. It was a war of silence until now. She broke it. I was discarded. Not because I was weak, but because I was inconvenient. Because I represented a flaw in the system designed by tyrants. But weakness is not what you think it is. She held up her arm, the neural veins glowing brighter. This what you fear is. Not a mutation. It is not a mistake. It is evolution. The data stream accelerated. Genetic maps. Interface patterns. The neuroharmonic bridge forming between her and the fetus broadcast for all to see. Proof, not theory. Not myth. Jackson looked down at the controls and saw the responses pouring in. They lied to us. I was born incomplete, but I'm not broken. She's proof. We don't have to be ashamed anymore. The hybrids live. It was working, and that terrified him. Deep in purity space, aboard a station older than most stars, a being of light and code watched from a throne of crystal. The leader of the Purity Directive did not speak. It didn't need to. Its eyes, composed of shifting lattice points of sentient plasma, narrowed as it absorbed Fla's broadcast. It had warned X, warned Krell, warned every genetic warden across the sectors. Hybridity must be contained. It had failed. She must be destroyed. It said, for the first time in 1,000 years. Back on the Vagrant, Fla's voice began to fade from the broadcast, replaced by a simple repeating message. Unity is strength. Diversity is evolution. The future is hybrid. She turned from the console, her body visibly trembling. Jackson was already there, arms wrapping around her as her knees gave out. You did it, he whispered. She shook her head against his chest. No, we started it, and now they're coming. He pulled back. Who? She looked up, her golden eyes flickering with something more than fear vision. The Purity Directive. The last of the first code. The ones who started this obsession with genetic perfection. They've stayed hidden, manipulating from the shadows for centuries, but I've seen them now, felt them watching, and they're afraid. Later, in the medbay, Flo lay curled in Jackson's arms, his hand resting protectively over her stomach. He could feel it, life thrumming beneath her skin, not like a heartbeat, but like a signal, like purpose made flesh. The child, she whispered, she's not just part of us. She's accelerating the interface's evolution. I can already perceive data flows before they exist, neural patterns before they fire. I see things, not quite future, but momentum, intent. You're telling me you can predict events? I'm telling you, she said softly, that I saw them send a fleet the moment I spoke. They're on the way. He stiffened. How long? 3 standard days, and they're not coming to talk. Jackson sat up. Then we need allies. Fla nodded. And not just rebels, not just exiles. We need everyone the directive tried to erase, the broken, the altered, the cast-offs. You want to turn the discarded into an army? No, she said. Into a future. The next 40 hours were a storm. Messages, smuggled tech, hidden warships piloted by cybernetically enhanced veterans, forgotten races in exile, modified, children rescued from directive culling centers. One by one, they responded. I can fly again. She gave us a reason. Count us in. They called it the Pulse Armada, a fleet born not of nations, but of shared pain. Jackson stood on the bridge of the stellar Vagrant, now retrofitted as command vessel, surrounded by ships that should have been mothballed, rusted, erased. But here they were, humming with life, piloted by people once considered unworthy. Beside him, Flo wore her interface armor like a second skin, radiating power. She turned to him, eyes steady. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, he said honestly, but I've never believed in anything more. She reached for his hand. Then stay with me, until the end. Not the end, he whispered. The beginning. When the Purity Directive fleet arrived, monolithic cruisers, like obsidian knives cutting through space, they expected desperation. What they found was resonance. Thousands of ships in formation, responding not to orders but to her. Through neural echo, interface resonance, and emotional feedback, FLA had created the first synchronized fleet born from shared trauma and forged by unity. She stepped forward. Her voice projected through the fleet-wide comms. You hunted us, silenced us, erased our names from your perfect codes. But now we speak together. You called us mistakes. We call ourselves the future. Then she looked to Jackson. He nodded once, and they fired the first shot together. The battle that followed wasn't one of tactics or numbers. It was one of meaning. The Pulse Armada adapted in real time. Every ship connected through FLA's enhancement. Every pilot responded to each other's thoughts. Fighters danced between enemy formations like ghosts. Cripples flew like aces. Cast-offs fought like titans. FLA stood at the center of it all, eyes glowing like a newborn sun, commanding a revolution with her very breath. Jackson watched her, awed beyond words, knowing deep in his bones that the galaxy would never be the same. As the Directive flagship broke apart, its core detonating into cascading stardust, a final signal pulsed out into the void, not defeat, but awakening. Something older, watching. Waiting. A final whisper reached FLA's mind. You've changed the game. And in the silence that followed, as the stars watched from their ancient perches, a hybrid child kicked softly in the womb, heralding the dawn of something entirely new. He child of stars, the war was over, but peace had not yet begun. In the wake of the Pulse Armada's impossible victory over the Purity Directive, the galaxy held its breath. Systems once divided by law, bloodlines, and fear now shared a single truth. The hybrid had survived, and she had won. FLA stood on the landing platform of the Unity Medical Center, the former central tower of her father's citadel. Vex himself, once a monarch of power and cruelty, now worked beneath her leadership, stripped of title, rebuilding what he once tried to destroy. He passed by her without a word, carrying medical crates. His eyes, once filled with superiority and judgment, now bore the quiet pain of a man humbled by his own blindness. And in them, a flicker of something else. Hope. Inside the repurposed medical chamber, FLA lay on a padded medical cradle surrounded by glowing interface monitors, her body trembling with each contraction. The neural enhancement that had once threatened to consume her now pulsed in harmony with her nervous system, a shimmering lace of gold and silver down her spine. Jackson stood at her side, one hand clasping hers tightly, the other wiping sweat from her brow. I hate this, she gasped. I've been shot at, burned, hunted, spliced into a machine, and this is worse. He chuckled through his nerves. Welcome to parenthood. Don't make jokes while I'm creating life, Jackson Reed. A laugh, then a cry. The cradle. Lights pulsed red. The enhancement surged. Dr. Elena Reed leaned over the interface array, voice calm and precise. Her neural rhythms are syncing with the fetus. The child is directing her birth, guiding the process. Jackson's heart hammered. She's already conscious? More than that, the doctor said. She's aware. The room began to shimmer. Not with light, with energy. The child was coming, and with her, the next stage. The moment of birth hit like a supernova. The machine surged, the lights dimmed, and for 3 seconds, every system in the station shut down as the hybrid child's first cry echoed through the medical bay and into every comm system across the PFASTM. Unity Network. She was born glowing. Her skin a soft emerald gold, her eyes like twin galaxies, world, with fractal patterns of light and endless depth. Tufts of dark hair crowned her tiny head, and her body pulsed with the quiet hum of interface resonance. The moment Jackson held her in his arms, the room warmed. Not by temperature, but by emotion radiating outward like a memory fell through every circuit in the ship. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice catching THLA. Pale and exhausted, reached out and touched her daughter's hand. "She's ours." Across the galaxy, the birth wave hit. Sensors in every major hub recorded the same anomaly, a harmonic pulse, soft and non-invasive but unmistakable. Every living being who had ever been labeled defective, every cyborg veteran, every child with mutations, every paralyzed elder felt something shift. Suddenly, the pain lessened. Neural connections sharpened, limbs moved. Old scars faded. The hybrid child had become more than a symbol. She was a frequency. A key. A living blueprint for biological and technological harmony. 3 months later, the first Unity Summit convened. Fla stood at the center of the great convocation hall built into the asteroid temple known as Threshold, the exact midpoint. Between Purity Space and the old inner systems, Jackson stood beside her, holding their daughter in his arms. She gurgled softly, playing with the threads of his collar, completely unaware that she had already shifted the course of history. Representatives from thousands of species attended, many of whom had once refused to breathe the same air as others. Now they sat side by side, watching the woman who had started it all. THLA step forward. No throne, no title, just a voice. "You once called me broken, paralyzed, a burden. But I was never broken. I was unseen. Today, we erase that blindness. We bury it with the systems that used it as fuel. This child, our child, is not the end of evolution. She is the beginning of belonging. From this day forward, we no longer measure life by its purity, but by its potential." The hall erupted not in chaos, not in ceremony, but in agreement. A rare thing in the galaxy. Peace. That night, Jackson stood on the viewing deck of the stellar vagrant, holding their daughter close as stars drifted past. Fla stepped beside him, wrapped in a soft robe, skin still faintly glowing from the interface's daily recalibrations. "She's already learning to speak," she said. "She's 3 months old." Jackson muttered. "She corrected my navigation math this morning using telepathic gesture." Fla replied, "I think she'll be piloting by next week." He grinned. "You sure she's ours?" She leaned into him. "No, she's better than both of us." Then quieter. "But she exists because we saw each other." Jackson nodded, eyes on the stars. "I never did get paid for that job." Fla smiled and kissed his cheek. "You got me. And a kid who glows in the dark. And a galaxy that's not on fire. For now." He looked down at the baby, who cooed softly in his arms. "You think she'll be okay?" "She already is. Far beyond the edge of known space, in a place where stars had gone silent and void light twisted in unnatural ways, something ancient stirred. It had watched the war. It had seen the broadcast. It had felt the child's pulse when she was born. Now it moved, not with ships. But with whispers, a new kind of threat. Not born from hatred or law, but from fear of what the child represented. Not destruction, but the end of control. Back aboard the vagrant, the child stirred in her sleep and smiled. As if she knew what was coming. As if she was already dreaming of the stars she would one day reshape. From a cruel joke. Came a revolution. From a discarded girl. Came the future.